This is the I'm from Denver podcast.
If you're a veteran, we need you to kind of hang out for a little bit and watch this. Or if someone in your family is a veteran, because we have the state commander for VFW, who's also a former sergeant. I mean, can you say former sergeant? I mean, a sergeant in the Marine Corps in Operation Desert Storm. John Keene is with us, and we're basically just trying to promote the VFW because you need new members, but there's also changes that are taking place in the VFW. Because John, I want you to jump in, introduce yourself, but there's kind of a rep that the VFW has over the past few years that you and you're really working hard to change.
Yeah, thanks for having me. You're correct. The VFW has somewhat of a stigma, or you could say a stereotype of being just a bar that serves cheap beer, not so much cigarette smoke filled, but in some places that still might be the case. And, we just are trying, at least in Colorado here, to change that perception. As you know, I'm a member of VFW Post One, who has kind of led the charge in rebranding the VFW. We have a saying at our post that we're not your grandfather's VFW anymore. We do things like yoga and non-narcotic therapies. Our VFW post doesn't even have a bar. We have a saloon, we like to call it, because we just get liquor licenses for special events like our first Friday art walk. So at least at the post level, we've been trying to change that image for a number of years. And now as a state commander for Colorado, I'm trying to also spread that message throughout the state. I do see a lot of other posts who are kind of doing their own thing, leading their own way, creating their own path to attract younger members who want to be more active in their community.
And it is crazy because we've known each other for a few years now.
Right.
Definitely have worked with you guys at the VFW. Appreciate you guys. Have a friend of mine, Jesse East, who has been. What's his role now? What's Jesse's role now? He's moving on up in the ranks.
Well, he's on Memorial Day. He's going to be installed as the new Post One commander. And
That's amazing.
If all goes well, in June, he may be elected as the state quartermaster. So yes, he's taking on bigger and better roles and doing great things for our group.
And he's got less of a Navy mouth now that he's moving up in the ranks. So it's nice to see him act a little bit more professional there. But you know what's cool is I didn't know. I mean, you hear VFW Post One or VFW 400. These numbers are when the VFW, that specific one, formed. Is that right? And you guys were the first one in Denver in the entire country. VFW Post One is the first, right?
That's correct. And in fact, our group actually predates the VFW. So if you want to go back to 1899, Spanish-American War, there was a group of Colorado volunteers who were sent over to fight in the Philippines. And when they were brought back to the continental U.S., the government dropped them off at a port in San Francisco and said, "Thank you for your service, but you're on your own to figure out how to get back to Denver." As you can imagine, in 1899, that wasn't quite as easy as it is today. So those group of veterans realized that the government was not going to treat them very well as veterans. And they started an advocacy group to fight for their benefits. And thankfully, in 1913, they had the foresight to invite a couple other like-minded groups from Ohio and Pennsylvania out to Denver. And they combined forces and they rebranded themselves as the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the United States, with the intent of creating a group that would literally outlive them. Because I think we've all heard stories about how the government sometimes just wait for veterans to die before giving them their benefits. So because of the way our charter was set up, I don't think we'll ever probably be without eligible veterans as we continue to fight in foreign wars or be subject to different hostilities around the world. Our problem now is making sure that those younger veterans who do qualify for the VFW know that we're not that stereotype, that we have a mission now of still serving, providing a community for them once they leave the service.
Somewhere to go. And I think What's super cool about the VFW Post One is the fact that First Friday Art Walk. Some people in Colorado might know that, might not, but on Santa Fe, it's a whole Friday thing where everyone walks up and down, and the different vendors on that street are selling art, but they're also open to the public. And you guys at your post actually have veterans selling their artwork, right? So when you
Right.
talk about not being a traditional hey, we have a bar in there, you guys are literally supporting not just your troops, your veterans, but you're actually giving them an outlet of almost therapy, and they get to make money at the same time for what it is they're creating, right?
Right. And at Post One, we say that the Veterans Arts Council, who runs the gallery and helps mentor those veteran artists, it's actually the next step beyond art therapy. So they've already figured out how to express themselves through their art. We provide them with an outlet then to share that art with the community, grow their small business, help them interact with the public and be able to explain their art even further than what the attendees are seeing either on the canvas or through whatever medium the artist is trying to express themselves. But again, it's another way to help with integration back into society once they leave the service. But Post One, Post One's not the only post out there doing great things. I mean, there are some posts.
There's hundreds,
for
right?
example,
how many posts are there?
Well, there. I think there are probably. I think it's roughly 6,000 VFW posts within, across the world. Okay. But back to your original question, yes. After that meeting in 1913, when we joined forces, VFW Post One was given. That number was given to the group in Denver. So yes, we were the first post, and then they do go up there sequentially from that point.
And how many are in Colorado now? So there's 6,000.
There's
total,
90.
But
there's 93 in Colorado currently. In fact, we just opened a few new posts throughout the state. Castle Rock has a new post, and because they're brand new, just like a post out in Falcon, they don't have a building. So obviously, if they don't own a building, they can't have a bar. They can't. They're starting out with a fresh slate, so they don't have to worry about that stigma because they get to chart their own path moving forward.
And that's where I'm from Denver teamed up with you guys at the VFW is because we actually have a page at vfw.imfromdenver.com where we can get new veterans for the Castle Rock location and all of these just members to join the VFW. And I think it's important that as you spread that word of, hey, we're different than what we were, because one of the things that we talked about, John, was the fact that I feel like it's not proper to call it Sergeant. I feel like I should call you Sergeant. But one of the things
just John.
One of the things we talked about, John, was just the fact that this is a continuation of service, right? So that was the message that you were trying to convey to me, that we wanted to convey to the I'm from Denver audience, is that this isn't just, hey, you're joining the VFW, but the goal is to have the veterans continue to serve their community as well as you give back to them. But that was the ultimate drive.
Right. It's to be able to associate with people who've been through similar circumstances through their deployments, but not necessarily have to talk about it. Right. You just know that you're surrounded by other veterans who kind of get you without having to be so specific. And then we've all learned throughout the military that when you team up and work on a common goal, it's much easier to achieve that goal through teamwork. So you can build those bonds of camaraderie again within your community, as opposed to what you're potentially doing when you're deployed and overseas. So there's a lot of crossover, a lot of familiarity with what we do out in the community. And just some examples, and we're talking about these posts that don't even have buildings. They're forced to go out and do things in the community because they don't.
I was wondering, how do they get
those
together? They're doing things for the community, and so they're almost like connecting online or however they connect and say, hey, we're going to do this weekend, and we need you guys to come out. You guys and girls. Is that how that works?
So they still do have to meet once a month at a physical location. So a lot of times they'll meet in public spaces, libraries, fire stations, whoever has room for them. the Castle Rock Post, they actually meet at where at the Eagles, the Order of the Eagles building. So they'll get together once a month and kind of plan things out. But then obviously leveraging social media is a great way to get together and go out and do things. Like there was a big, they call it a ruck march. So if you're not in the military or if you're not in the Army calls their backpack, they call it a ruck. And there's a big ruck march at the Douglas County Fairgrounds earlier this month, where it's the largest one-day canned food drive in the state of Colorado. And a lot of military personnel and veterans go out there and they go these 5, 10, or 30-kilometer routes with 25 pounds of canned food in their ruck. So then they donate that at the end of their march, and that requires a lot of volunteers, obviously, as well. So I know that the Castle Rock Post was out there supporting that, helping weighing the food, working on the route, and then just being out in the community where people can see you and they know you're visible and they know what the VFW is about, instead of being hunkered down and, again, that kind of stereotypical smoky bar.
Yeah. And man, that is so, I don't want to say sad, but it's almost just disappointing that is the stereotype or the rep that it gets, because, man, what a difference 25 pounds of food makes. And each of these veterans are carrying that on their back. And that makes such a difference. And it's all for the community. And I think it is important for I'm from Denver to get involved and help you guys. And so your role as the state commander for the VFW is are you helping implement kind of this awareness of, hey, we're not a bar? It's like, what is your role to kind of, I guess, reestablish the image?
But yeah, I've taken on the role of definitely trying to break the stereotype. I'm also, among the 14,000 members we currently have in Colorado, spread out through all 4 corners of the state, just also making groups aware of different things that are going on and different opportunities. So I've participated in that ruck march for a number of years. So when the Castle Rock Post was started this year, I knew that was going to be one of the prime examples of them getting out in the community and starting, again, kind of forging their own path of what they're going to be as a VFW post. So helping connect those dots, getting posts to work with one another, kind of be more of partners as opposed to, hey, you're a Post One member, so you can't help, the Castle Rock Post.
Does that exist? Is that rivalry exists almost? Or I mean, is it kind of like that sports mantra of like, hey, this is my team? Is that real?
Well, it's more surface level. Okay. So it's kind of like branch rivalries. Marines give the Army a hard time, but when it comes down to getting the work done and accomplishing the mission, we always gel and come together and make sure things are taken care of.
But you got to give each other shit while you do it. That's basically
absolutely. So yeah, there is some friendly rivalry among posts, and getting them to, again, work together and be able to accomplish more as a team is always helpful. Another role as
go for it.
Another role as the state commander is to also, be an advocate for benefits for all veterans.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, because you made a video that we were promoting on there that you talked about a story about how you help someone. So it's like, there's, hey, if you want to continue to help your service, but man, you're really making a difference as far as the veterans because let's face it, they need help. And like you said, the first post started with the government almost saying, you're on your own. That the VFW does a lot more than it just maybe, like you said, the bar or giving back to the community.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I'd like to just kind of share another story with you. So, I got back from Desert Storm, was 91. Personally, at the time, I felt that all the hoopla that was made about our coming home was America's opportunity for a do-over for how they treated the Vietnam vets. I think the parades were a little bit too much. I remember I was a Chicago Marine, so we had a parade down Michigan Avenue that just, didn't quite feel right. I didn't feel like I deserved it. But I joined the VFW. There was one in my town, the town I was living in at the time, and that was the stereotypical smoky bar. It was full of World War II vets, and I didn't really see them doing much out in the community, and I let my membership lapse. So what I learned, though, when I moved to Denver and I found out about Post One and saw what they were doing, and I renewed my membership. It had been, 20 plus years, but the VFW, even though I let my membership lapse, because I was a veteran, the VFW was still fighting for me, fighting for my benefits, trying to get Gulf War illness, or what they now call Gulf War syndrome, recognized as something that was real, that my fellow Desert Storm vets, these problems they were having were not just in their mind as they were told originally. So
was that like PTSD, or is it respiratory? What was that?
It is a multi-symptom with no diagnosis. So I can see how it was initially. It was kind of not taken seriously, but they were able to realize that people that had chronic fatigue and irritable bowel syndrome and different problems, systemic problems that really had no explanation. There were just too many veterans coming back that were suffering from the same thing for just to be coincidence. So similar to Agent Orange, which took decades for the government to recognize, Gulf War syndrome, it took them decades to recognize it. The burn pits, it didn't quite take as long, but eventually the government did recognize it. And a lot of those benefits were due to the advocacy of the VFW. So when I got reengaged, that's when it really struck home to me that, when the VFW says no one does more for veterans than the VFW, I think that's a true statement, because you don't have to be a member of the VFW to benefit from our advocacy. You don't have to be a member of the VFW to go see one of our service officers who can help you with your claims. To make sure that not only
anyone that's a vet can
any veteran.
Wow. And do they just go to the VFW near them to or how does that work?
Yeah, so every VFW post has a post service officer. Now, that post service officer can just help instruct the veteran on what forms they need and how that veteran can submit them to the VA directly. But we have what are called accredited service officers who work out of our office out in Lakewood. We also have another service officer down at one of the posts in Colorado Springs. And we have a part-time service officer out on the Western Slope, works out of Grand Junction. And what accredited means is they've actually gone through training provided by the VA that lets them have access to the VA systems. And the accredited service officers actually are advocates for the veteran, the individual veteran, and they're somewhat adversarial to the VA in that they will help the veteran actually submit the claims on behalf of the veteran, help with appeals, help them if they need to go to an administrative hearing. So the success rate of a veteran having their claims approved and getting a higher level of disability increases greatly when you work with an accredited service officer versus trying to do it on your own.
Yeah, but I didn't want to interrupt your story there. I just wanted to let everyone know if they're a veteran that there's resources available to them, because maybe not everyone knows that. I mean, all the veterans, I should say, that are unaware of that, and I'm sure a lot of them could be in need.
Yeah, and unfortunately, something else I'm trying to do again as an advocate and working with our legislators on the national level is to break down some of the barriers, because believe it or not, a veteran could go to the VA and be diagnosed with a condition which is called a presumptive condition, meaning the government has already acknowledged the fact that this diagnosis, say diabetes or high blood pressure, is connected to your service. They're not going to argue that fact. They've already said, yes, it's presumptive condition. So if you were in Vietnam and you have high blood pressure, the government says we take responsibility for that. We understand that high blood pressure is on us. We sent you there, and now you're suffering. So they'll provide that veteran with all the health care they need to treat that condition. However, it takes a separate, distinct set of forms for that veteran to then claim a disability for compensation. So there's a health administration and there's a benefits administration. So what the service officers do, in addition to helping the veteran seek the treatment and get relief for whatever it is they're suffering from, the service officers can then also take that extra step to file a claim for compensation. And there are a lot of veterans out there that are currently being treated by the VA for conditions that are known to have been caused by their service, who are not being compensated because they just don't know. So being an advocate for increased benefits is great, but unless the veterans know that they're eligible for compensation, unless they know how to actually file for that compensation, a lot of them just go without. So, getting out.
And they're disgruntled and they're just blaming everyone. And how frustrating.
Sometimes, but sometimes they're just happy enough. Yeah, I agree. And sometimes they're happy just to get the health care. I mean, that is a great benefit, in and of itself, because healthcare, is expensive. But they don't realize, they're not necessarily disgruntled because they don't know that there's something out there that is due to them, but they're not receiving. So when we talk about growing our membership, getting younger members to join the VFW, it also helps us to spread that word. And it helps us help them get the benefits and the compensation that they deserve. Something else I've come to realize is, my day job, I'm a realtor, right? I deal with a lot of veterans. They love their VA loan, right? They go out there and I'm going to help them buy a house, and they use their VA loan, 100% financing. It's super easy, great benefit. Many veterans, I'm sure that went to school. They use the GI Bill, okay? But a lot of times veterans, when I ask them about enrolling in VA healthcare, their initial response is, because veterans, for the most part, put others before themselves. A lot of times they'll say to me, well, I don't need it. I've got a job. I'm healthy. I don't want to take away from another veteran who needs it more than I do, which is actually not how the system works. So every time a veteran enrolls in VA healthcare, the government has to fund them as a patient. What is the anticipated cost of having one more person in the system? So if you really don't need it, you're actually providing more resources for the guy who does need it. So quote unquote,
because
more than you.
Because you're getting that, they have you in the system.
You're in the system. They have to fund you.
They don't have to fund you, but they can. Oh wow, yeah.
All right. Then the other thing about the compensation part is, I've also heard veterans say, well, it's only a couple $100 or maybe it's $1,000 or whatever it is. They have a similar attitude, like, I don't really need it. Let somebody else take it. But I've yet to meet anybody who's 65 or older who decided, I don't need my Social Security check, or I don't need Medicare. No, they take it because they paid into that system throughout their adult life. And what I've been trying to tell veterans is, you paid into the VA system the day you raised your hand and swore your oath and served your country. So if you are due healthcare and or compensation, don't turn it down, just like you wouldn't turn down your Social Security. Right? Well, it's there for you to use.
It's like that whole tough guy, tough girl mentality that, and obviously I haven't served, but and I appreciate everyone who has, but it's like anyone who knows a veteran knows that it's a tough guy, tough girl personality. I don't need shit from anybody. And so it's almost that's hurting them, just because.
Right.
But it's not a bad thing to have, but it's like that pride is almost preventing them from taking advantage of something that is rightfully theirs.
Yeah, and that's also another part of the overcoming our that old stereotype is, there are a lot of VFWs A lot of our members are out there doing good things, but they also don't like to publicize it, right? They want to just do the work, get it done, and just go back to, being kind of in the shadows. We're not very good at self-promoting. So again, unless people can see what we're doing out there in the community, that makes it even harder for us to, again, overcome that stereotype and that stigma. So I encourage all the posts, again, as a state commander, what I'm trying to encourage our posts to do is, brag on yourself a little bit. When you do something that has an impact, make sure people know about it. There's nothing wrong with having your local newspaper write up a story, post all those pictures on Facebook and Instagram. Let people know out there, see what you're doing. And if they see it and they like what you're doing, we don't really have to even worry about recruiting. We'll have eligible veterans coming up to us and asking, hey, how can I be part of that? How can I help you? Because again, they have that still serving mentality. They want to be involved. They're looking for something to do because a lot of times they've lost that feeling of having a mission when they separate from the military. And to kind of back up to my story about the VFW is, I let my membership lapse originally, but I was a police officer, so there was a lot of similarity and overlap between being in the military and being in law enforcement, just like firefighters or medical service professionals, paramedics, stuff like that. That's why you see a lot of veterans gravitate towards those types of jobs. It wasn't until I moved to Colorado and I got my real estate license, I realized that I was missing that camaraderie piece. So that's when I re-engaged with the VFW. Like I said, it really struck a chord with me about the advocacy that had gone on during that gap. But it also gave me that piece that I felt was missing from so-called kind of like the more so corporate job, as opposed to a job that's more fraternal.
One? Did you join Post One, or was that you found that was the first, that was the one you joined, and then was the art
right?
So because you let the membership lapse because the other one was so stereotypical as a bar. Did you walk into this one and it was already similar to that, or were they doing the art and you're like, this is so different?
What's interesting is I was at a charity event and I met another Marine and we started talking, and he actually was a member of Post One at the time. So he asked me, and he's like, "Yeah, you should come down and check it out." And this was a period when Post One also did not have a building. We had no what they call post home, because I think it was maybe 2002. The VFW Post One almost lost its charter, almost went out of, lack of a better term, went out of business because they had a building that had a bar. It was in South Denver on Bannock Street. And, ask any bar owner, that's a tough business to be in. I mean, try to think about trying to run a bar in Denver when there's so many bars around and you're trying to compete. And they ended up getting in financial trouble and had to sell their buildings. So they were homeless for a number of years, and they used to just meet at a different VFW. And that was the state of the Post when I joined in 2008. So we didn't have the art gallery then. What happened was eventually in 2014, we found a building, and we decided, the leadership at the time decided, well, we don't want to try to recreate a wheel that we know is broken, right? We're not going to having a bar. Yeah, right. It was not sustainable in the past. So why would we just go back where we left off? So the building we found happened to be in the art district. And it just became a natural progression of, well, let's just try to, again, integrate with our community. This is what surrounds us. And it just kind of took off from there.
Wow. And that's, I think, to go back to your point earlier, as a civilian, when you say that the veterans don't want to pat themselves on the back or let it be known, as a civilian walking into the Post on First Friday Art Walk, you almost have this feeling of, wow, this is amazing. You have a sense of you want to buy the artwork, right? Like because not only is it good art, but you really feel like, well, I'm going to give back to this veteran. I appreciate what they've done. So even someone patting themselves on the back from a civilian's perspective, that's not patting them on the back. That's them continuing to give service. And you are almost in awe of that someone is so selfless that even after serving abroad and then they're not having to serve anymore, but then they're still back here giving back to the community. You almost feel like shit as a civilian because you're like, what have I done?
No, I hope not. I hope we don't
No.
make people feel that way. We want them to
No.
feel
I
good.
just mean that's like, man, we're worthless compared to someone who's just who is doing so much. And I think it's fantastic what the VFW is doing and what you're doing. I mean, you've been a member for a long time and you continue to do it as the state commander. So what's next? I know that we started this off as saying if you're a veteran or if you know a veteran to go to vfw.imfromdenver.com to sign up. But what's next for the VFW and what's your ultimate goal or what's the message you want to give to any veterans or the veterans families watching right now?
Well, I'm going to continue with the advocacy piece. I know that the PACT Act was the largest veterans benefits package passed, that's ever been passed, but it was just the start. We need to keep enhancing it because, more and more conditions are being connected back to these toxic exposures. There are a lot more veterans that are suffering. So my message to everybody out there is, if you're eligible for the VFW, just by joining, you don't necessarily have to, if you don't feel like you have the time to do the community service and help with that still serving mission. If you could at least join so we can take your voice with us to Washington to continue as those Spanish American War veterans started in 1899, helping veterans get their benefits. And you did mention the family members. So the VFW has what's called an auxiliary, which is when you have a direct line family connection to a veteran who is eligible for the VFW. So anybody from a grandparent down to a grandchild can join our auxiliary. And that's even just helps with the voice because when the commander-in-chief goes to testify in D.C., he always starts off his testimony saying that he's there representing the 1.5 million VFW and auxiliary members because our congressional charter actually, aside from advocating for veterans, we are also out there advocating for our dependents and our surviving family members. Because if a veteran dies from a service-connected illness or injury, their dependents continue to receive benefits as well. So having members join the auxiliary also amplifies our voice. So again, if you can just, if nothing else, if you can lend us your voice for our advocacy work, like I said, it benefits all veterans, whether they belong to the VFW or not. So you can really have an impact. As you said, I told that story about my Marine buddy in Florida, who after the PACT Act, the benefits he received changed his life and the life of his wife, who again will continue to receive those benefits after he passes away. And we know that he's terminal. So it's just a matter of time.
How did that work? For those that don't know, because that was a separate video that we were throwing on our network. But let's have you talk about that because that was sad but inspirational.
Yeah, over 10 years ago, he was diagnosed with bladder cancer and stomach cancer, and he's been on double colostomy bags, gone through numerous rounds of chemotherapy and radiation, but the VA originally denied that his conditions were service connected. So he had to pay for that stuff through normal means. His wife had to keep a job that provided the family with health insurance, so that he could get the treatment that he needed. And as soon as the PACT Act was passed, and I saw that stomach cancer and bladder cancer are both now considered presumptive conditions, I got him in touch with an accredited service officer who helped him refile his claim. And this time around, they approved it. So they considered him to be a 100% service-connected disabled veteran, which opened up the whole box of benefits. Specifically, now his wife doesn't have to keep working to provide health care because his health care is taken care of. Additionally, she now qualifies for a program that's called CHAMP VA, which is for dependents of service-connected, 100% service-connected disabled veterans. So she now gets to spend her time with her husband, however much time he has left. They get to spend that together, and they don't have to worry about how are they going to pay for the treatment. And then additionally,
you helped him know that, though, right? Like, I mean, that's basically, he didn't know that until you kind of stepped up.
No, he didn't know that. And that's one of the biggest thing is this awareness. Like I said, we can get the greatest benefits in the world passed for veterans, but until they know that they're eligible and until they know how to access those benefits, it's not really doing them any good. So, yeah, they couldn't be more grateful for the VFW and advocacy work. And, there's just so many other stories like that that I've experienced this year as the commander, talking to veterans who just say that the VFW, our service office in particular, has changed and sometimes even saved their lives. I met a retired major who was a special forces surgeon. So you figure this guy's pretty squared away. He got home and couldn't figure out the VA system, right? Tried filing claims, got denied, was just really struggling. And eventually he got hooked up with our service officers out in Lakewood on Van Gordon. And this was just a week ago. He showed me an email that he had sent to the service officer that helped him, where he literally thanked that service officer for getting his benefits and how it saved his life. So, wow. I mean, with that level of impact, I just keep pushing, and trying to grow this organization because it really, we're making a difference in the lives of veterans. Not only the camaraderie, but the advocacy, the benefits. It's just all goes together, and
you're really
makes us feel good.
You're changing it for what it is, man, and what it should be and what it's all about. And so I give you credit for that. I mean, Sergeant Keene, we talked about people patting themselves on the back a little bit, like pat yourself on the back. I mean, what you're doing and what you've done for the veterans and the VFW. And the most impressive part to me is that you're a former Marine, and everything I've seen has been even kill. I have. You're just very composed, man. Is that the whole breathing tactics that they teach you as a Marine? Is what makes you so calm?
Well, I don't know if you've ever heard that quote from General Mattis, but a Marine is no greater friend, no worse enemy. So, just got to be chill. And then, when you need to come with the violence, then that's when it's appropriate. But other than that, we're your greatest friends out there. Strongest advocates.
That surmises you and you perfectly, and all the veterans out there, man. I appreciate your time, Sergeant Keene, and there is ways for you to join the VFW, and we have them at vfw.imfromdenver.com. Hopefully everyone stuck around to hear what a difference it can make, and then hopefully everyone that needs those benefits if they're a veteran now understand that there's the resources with the VA to get those. I left knowing a lot more now than I did prior, and I know we've had a few discussions about what it is, but there's definitely a lot of benefits that come with joining the VFW, and it's not the bar, and it's not the smoking, it's none of that. And so it's great to see what the organization's doing.
Yeah, and we also need to get back to that family-friendly environment as well. So that's where the auxiliary comes in. Is bring your spouses, bring your parents, bring your kids. Let's get back to doing things not only just as comrades with the VFW, but also bring your family in there with the auxiliary, and everybody can do their part.